Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to take this chance to once again welcome you all to this channel. This channel is dubbed Professor Silas Odongo Knowledge Hub. In this channel, ladies and gentlemen, today I want to continue with what I began. I've been talking to you about climate change research, and I've taken you through the introductory bit. I've taken you through the socioeconomic bit and the elements like quantitative methods, qualitative methods. Today, allow me to engage you a little bit through the presentation of triangulation method. Triangulation method. Ideally, triangulation is supposed to be discussed after those methodologies that I mentioned have been captured. Because many times issues arise. People have been saying that is it possible that one methodology is conclusive for a study? Is it possible that one researcher is conclusive? Is it possible that one theory is enough to just guide a study? Is it possible that one set of data is possible that we can get comprehensive information? What this means is that the idea that we had begun to mention, to discuss here, is the idea of integration. If you were, for example, to combine biophysical and socioeconomic data, we said that the weakness of one of them could have been countered by the other one. Just like we had said, if you look at the socioeconomic methodologies that we discussed, the quantitative and qualitative, if somebody was to triangulate them, if somebody was to mix them, you get the idea that each of those methods discuss or present different sets of data and methodologies. So if you were to converge them, if you were to mix them, then we talk about triangulation. In the same way, I had asked a question like, if you have one or two methods, it appears like you're much more comprehensive than if you only used one method. Look at society that we talk about, very complex, and using one lens to determine an issue becomes problematic. You probably would have used different methodologies. Take, for example, me appearing on your screen. If somebody asked you to describe me, and you possibly is the one sitting in front of me, and you could possibly see my head, you could see my chest, I wonder which other place you could see. And I'm supposing you were to step from there and come towards me and probably look at my left side. And then you check me from the left side. And then you turn around and look at me through the right side. And then again, maybe you walk backwards and study me through my back. And probably you climb a table to see the top of my head. And maybe you lie down facing up and you're able to see my underneath. You probably could be very happy that you have seen me, you are able to describe me through those 6 lenses that you have seen. So if you were to compare somebody who has looked at me through those 6 lenses with one who has just seen me or described me using one lens, who would have been more exhaustive in describing me? So research and modern science work like that. So we normally ask questions like, how many methodologies in one study are enough? How many theories in one study are enough? Or how many sets of data could we say is enough? And then, for example, how many researchers could constitute a comprehensive study? Either of them, you could talk like that. And we have studies by one researcher that have been very impactful. But we also have studies by many researchers, like a collaboration that have been very much impactful. Just like we'll be having studies that are underpinned by so many theories. So we do have a theoretical framework or even a conceptual framework that are much more valuable. We also have studies that have taken into account the different data sets. We have the qualitative and the quantitative. That is what we'll discuss today, ladies and gentlemen. So the idea of mixing or integrating in research at the level of researcher, at the level of methods, at the level of theories, at the level of data, is what we refer to as triangulation, is what we refer to as mixing. So we can mix, we can triangulate at those levels. There's a scholar I normally like to look at Dipoy and Gitlin. 1993, they came up with the basic idea around mixing or triangulations. And they came up with the 3 strategies that you can use to really do triangulations. The first one, they call it the nested triangulation. The second one, they call sequential triangulations. And then the last one, they call parallel triangulations. And inside each, they espouse how you might mix, how you might integrate researchers, how you might integrate theories, how you might integrate data, and how you might want to integrate even methods. So when you take the nested strategy of triangulation, you kind of just choose one domineering method. You choose one main theory or methodology, and then you supplement it with just a technique from another one method. So you've been able to see studies that are frameworked that way. So you have an underpinning or an overbearing or an overarching theory. And then if it is a survey, then it is not enough. So you simply add a small bit of, let's say, a qualitative bit, so that the qualitative part will just supplement and complement the main methodology. Look at even the case of researchers. A typical research could be having a main researcher, like a principal researcher, together with so many other lower level researchers. You could talk about the co-PI or research assistants that are there. So you can have that kind of mixing. It is possible that somebody can envisage and commission a study that takes that stance. The second approach to triangulation, to mixing, would be what we call sequential mixing. It's very common, and many people normally use it, particularly in studies like studies on climate change, particularly where you are able to combine the complexities of situations, like you combine data sets, or you use the 2 main approaches, the biophysical and socioeconomic. You can imagine that. So in this method, the first methodology is there to explore the initial levels of the study. And then after doing that, it leads you into developing a hypothesis. And then you look at a second methodology to finish the study. Can you imagine? You can have a study where the research objectives are serialized, like the first one must be done before you go to the second one. And the second one actually is done before you go to the third one. So each one of them leads into another one. It's much more possible. We can do that, sequential studies. And then the last bit is the parallel strategy, where you can take as many methods as you want, but those methods that you are taking, each and every one of them become standard. So they are all equal to one another. It is not like one method is overbearing or domineering or overarching. So you take methods and treat them as if they were equal. So how do you use them? So how possible is it that you can run research studies using this? We have been able to see a lot of collaborative research, a lot of grand research that are largely collaborative, consultative, and involves partnership building. And the people believe that if a study takes that stance, if the study is triangulated at the level of researchers, the results are much more believable. I don't know what you feel about even a research paper that has been written by more than one scholar. You can imagine that the weakness of one scholar can be compensated by the strength of another one. You can imagine that. The same as if you were to use one theory to give direction to your study. And one theory can just do as much. But if there were two, you begin to see what I have already described to you. Like if you wanted to describe me and you used 6 dimensions, is it still the same as if you had used just 1 dimension? You can imagine that. If you were to study a phenomenon like climate change and you only rely on biophysical data at the exclusion of socioeconomic, will you have delved deep? Remember what we had said about data. So you look at the quantitative ones, and then you look at the qualitative ones, and you begin to imagine that if you put all of them together, there is that level of complementarity. So that is what we are kind of talking about here. So how would we, for example, manage such kind of research? How would we do? So we know that where there are many entities, there are likely to be conflicts. So how do we manage conflicts? Which takes us to the processes of conflict resolutions. So you ensure that when you are packaging a partnership in research, then you begin to look at the interest, and so that people with very competing interests may not work favorably in one particular study. Just like methods that are conflicting one another may not really augur well in one particular study, or theories that are at loggerheads may not really work together to get us. Remember, the reason why we have many theories in one study is such that a deficiency of one of them is supposed to be sorted out by the efficiency of the next one. So that's what we are talking about. Theories, for instance, are supposed to provide us with initial answers to research questions that we had. And so trying to build a theoretical framework through triangulation can be a good thing, but then the catch is how many theories are good enough. So I normally advise that you don't go beyond 3 theories. Ensure that the theories that you choose in your study, you can even choose one, but the one that you have chosen should be very versatile, should be one that has been reviewed over a long time, and so its dimensions or tenets have been improved. Remember, the reason why we are having so many theories is because a lot of research has been done, and people just update existing theories. So that's what we are really thinking about. So with regard to managing data here, so we look at quantitative data and qualitative data and how we can make use of them in one particular study. How is that supposed to be done? The idea that we are using in triangulation is you might want to have the nested approach, where the first theory is overbearing, or the first method is overbearing, or cross-cutting or overarching. So you can use it. You can use the data that you have mined through that main methodology so that you can use it to form a framework. Then the other small methodology that you have used to support it will just be plugging in the gaps. So the entire research work is grounded on that, much more like methodology or philosophy. Every study, you realize people are citing, my study is supposed to be guided by this methodology, this philosophy. And so you can look at this study that is being frameworked around a direction that we are taking. So you can imagine that kind of thinking. So you look at the objectives of the study, then you present the data, analyze this data, and then you discuss the results and you review them, and then you include the voice. And then in doing this, you are alive to the fact that every research undertaking is guided by research ethics. So you even in envisaging multi-methodology, in trying to come up with a collaborative team of researchers, even in considering the theories, a number of theories, or a theoretical framework or a conceptual framework that will help explain your work, you need to go into ethics of it. And ethics runs at the level of research problem. So what do you consider as a research problem? And you look at even the setting and the site of the study. Look at the procedures that you'll be using, which ethical issues arise because of those procedures. And even the methods that you must use. The methods that you must use will raise or address the ethical concerns. Look at the persons that are being interviewed, the persons that are called research subjects. or respondents or participants. So there are issues around that, even the kind of data that you collect and even what you do with the data that you collect. So those ethical concerns are important, and they are normally addressed through issues of confidentiality. So look at those confidentiality, and they normally seek permission of people before you even record them. You seek permission of adults when you want to deal with minors, or a number of things that we look at. If it is a sensitive issue, maybe health issues that are cultural, you can look at consent, informed consent, and declaration. So when you use people's data, you need to think about the declaration. So privacy of subject, there's no study that is worth doing if it's against privacy of a person. You maybe just leave it, and then look at anonymity and so many other issues. So ladies and gentlemen, allow me to summarize that with regard to the question I addressed initially with the triangulation. It's important because even now when I was making the presentation around socioeconomic, there's a way in which I gave you some historical rendition on how we have progressed with our methodology. When we say that the most modern and most effective research method now for climate change being both biophysical and socioeconomic, what I'm alluding is that bit of triangulation, that bit of integration, that bit of mixing. And it's better to run research that follows the triangulation, that is integrative, where you become as comprehensive as possible. So ladies and gentlemen, allow me to stop this presentation, hoping that what I have mentioned, what I have discussed, what I have espoused to you on socioeconomic research will be of importance to you. And I will leave this part and get you back to biophysical methodology. After finishing that, I'll go to telling you about the transdisciplinarity. For now, please don't forget to like, to share, to subscribe to this channel. And remember, it is always Professor Silas Odongo Knowledge Hub. See you next time. Bye.